Welcome
Everyone.
to Wonderful Wednesday, captive audience. I'm Suni Danforth, not David Darnell or Kevin Hoare, but tonight I've got Kevin Hoare with me, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's already October 5th. It just seems like the time is flying. And of course, we're only a couple weeks, 2.5 weeks, and ballots are going to be arriving in your mailboxes. It's really soon.
It is. I'll tell you what, it's time is flying. It's going by so fast, and the races are heating up. Politics is heating up as it's getting closer to the wire. And so did you watch first of all, thank you. I want to thank you, first of all, for covering for me while I was gone last week. I'm very happy to escape Hurricane Ian with my mother. We were in Florida and were able to get out of there in the nick of time. And we were like one of the last flights, if not the last flight out of Miami on Tuesday. So
Wow.
I just really do appreciate being back here, being safe, and you and David covering for me, filling in. I appreciate it.
We're glad to do it. And sorry that your time in Florida, was impacted by the hurricane. A lot of people are hurting there right now and trying to pick up the pieces, but they actually have a real governor. So it seems like that, I saw some coverage of this morning, and he's like in command. He's got things happening to rescue folks rapidly, to begin to remove debris, to restore power, command centers, even on these places that got completely washed over by the water. And that's what it looks like when you have a real governor. And the media, of course, is doing the same garbage to him as they always do. And
Yeah.
he's shredding them, which is awesome.
Yes, he is. And and he's command of the scene of what's happening. And of course, the liberal media is wanting to, to attack him for everything. And this is where, like I heard today, somebody was attacking him for how come you didn't declare a state of emergency for this other area and what have you. Well, the thing is, they don't know exactly where it's going to go, and there's other forces. There was a high pressure. I told my mom, because I used to really watch a lot of weather when I was sailing. I told my mom, I said, there's a high pressure here. I think it's going to go a little further east, but we're going to be okay in Miami, but we need to get out of here because it's no fun. This is not tourist weather. So
No, and you can't evacuate, what is it, like 27 million people. I mean, you just don't. That doesn't happen. Actually, what happened was they knew some of the likely to be hit severe areas like Fort Myers, and they were very clear about getting out
yeah,
of there. And people sometimes it's a free country, and people don't listen. Yet,
very,
still try to
very
rescue.
true. And also, a hurricane you can be 25, 30 miles from a hurricane and hardly have any effects. You're going to have rain, but you're not going to get those high extreme winds. And so there's a huge cone of where it could go. And you do need to prepare and get ready. It's hurricane season, and you live in an area that's what happens. But you don't have to be very far. So thank you all for the welcome backs. It's good to be back. And so anyway, hey, well, listen, Kevin, did you watch the debate last night? I wasn't able to. I tried. I had a central committee meeting, and I tried to get it on, but my internet connection was so bad, I wasn't even able to have the Zoom portion of my meeting going on. That's never happened. And so I didn't get to see any of it. Tell me about it.
So I've got to see the highlights and read the coverage. I didn't get to watch the entire debate, but I think that there's some real takeaways from what took place last night. And by the way, once again, the Tina Kotek's lavish promise of rural broadband once again fails. In the case of what you just described, and we just had it with Jeff Helfrich on Monday, where he had some technical difficulties from where he was coming from, and she bragged about it in a debate last week. Like, I'm sorry, but apparently it's like let them eat rural broadband out there in the boonies. You eat rural broadband, and it never comes. They haven't done it. This is maybe part of the theme is that the Democrats, Tina Kotek, they're in trouble. It's very clear. One of the headlines this morning is that there are 4 polls that are showing Christine Drazen ahead. And that debate, one of the things you can learn from that debate is right now Tina Kotek is flailing. And the highlights, Tina Kotek's defending the status quo. She's actually trying to make sure that she defends everything that was being done already with all the policies she likes, but that she's going to change things for the better. And then, and this is the most amazing thing of all, she is attacking Kate Brown now, the person who she was supposed to be providing oversight to as the Speaker of the House for 10 years.
Wow.
And she didn't do it. Every time she had a chance to go and say, Kate, that's enough, she didn't do it.
No, not at all.
She refused. And now, and there's an article that actually spells out 2 times that she attacks Kate Brown. She said, Kate Brown has been absent. Governor Brown has been absent on these issues. Would you change any part of Measure 110? She's absent. And then she says, because remember, it took 8 months for them to get benefits to people in the middle of COVID, when they were forced to shut down their businesses and be unemployed. Now Tina Kotek's saying we should have had a new employment director a lot sooner than when Governor Brown changed that leadership. Tina Kotek didn't say anything.
No,
they didn't even ask. That I watched the
and neither did Betsy Johnson.
Neither did she. Well, Betsy Johnson is a 94% Kotek. That's what we learned yesterday. The RGA put out something saying that she voted with Tina Kotek 94% of the time. So if you like 94% Tina Kotek, then that's Betsy. But Betsy's falling behind in the polls and can't break 20%, which is not going to be. She's not even going to be competitive in this. But I remember watching.
But she could still be. Board. My fear is she's not competitive. She will no way to win, but stealing enough votes that hurts our chances.
So according to what we talked about yesterday, David and I on Captive Audience, the Daily Kos is a Democrats web blog that put out a story saying that it's clear that Betsy is taking more votes away from Tina Kotek than she is from Christine Drazen. And then David also mentioned that there's a poll that he had just seen that showed that if you ask the question, if Betsy Johnson weren't in this race, who would you vote for? And Christine Drazen had a 6-point lead in that poll. So, awesome. So this is, so that seems to be where things are heading. And the person who knows this is Tina Kotek, who's starting to attack the nation's least popular governor, Kate Brown. But she's saying that we should have changed leadership in these departments. You know who sat in an e-board meeting and didn't ask any critical questions of the director of the employment department? I watched this back in 2020. I watched it. It was like an hour-and-a-half meeting. They had a 45-minute.
You suffered through it, you mean?
I suffered through it. 45-minute presentation. They wouldn't let the Republicans ask any questions. They just said, sit there and watch this PowerPoint presentation from this person that was heading the employment department. And then they ended it without any questions. You know who ran that meeting? Tina Kotek. And then 2 days later, Senator Ron Wyden decided to pipe up and complain openly about this person, saying, I think you need to replace him. He had to go public with this criticism, and then Kate Brown finally fired the person. Where was Tina Kotek? Tina Kotek was busy sitting on the bench doing her brass knuckles, covering Kate's butt politics. That's what she did. Yeah. She did it for years, and she is worse than Kate Brown. She is somebody who's still defending the status quo, even though the status quo is completely not in the desire of anybody in the state at this point. So, but when you start attacking the person that you were covering for all these years, you are probably watching polls and you're in trouble. And it's nice to see that Tina might be falling behind. If you want to watch the entire debate on KATU from last night, you can. I just put the link in the feed here. Some other news, by the way, that's not only not good for Tina Kotek, but it's also the being featured in an ad that the Drazen campaign has put out. So Tina Kotek was Speaker of the House, and she had a responsibility under House rules and the law when there were sexual harassment complaints to take action. Well, turns out that all this information starting to emerge that in fact she didn't act on these complaints. She played politics with these complaints, and she used them in order to gain leverage over people that she wanted to get votes from. So, very serious matter. Sexual harassment complaints are supposed to be acted on in 84 days after they're made.
Mm.
And
Wow.
apparently, more than 600 days passed before a now former lawmaker could have the complaint against him resolved. And the person who was behind manipulating this, Speaker Tina Kotek. The emails are now out there revealing what happened. And she also has been the target of abuse complaints. And there's a TV ad put out by the Drazen campaign called Bully, because that's what Tina Kotek is. She's a bully.
She is a bully.
And she's somebody who's been, she might have been effective in the backroom brass knuckles politics of Democrat Salem state legislative politics, but now it's all coming out and it's all happening at once, that people are starting to find out what you really had or what you really have as a Democrat nominee. She is not a likable person. David and I talked about that last week. Not likable. And if you're not likable, then how do you get people to vote for you when the only tool you had was intimidation and fear?
Right, exactly. And frankly, that's the Democrat playbook, though, is to rule by fear and try to intimidate you. Look what they're doing to the conservatives of our nation. They're trying to rule us with fear and intimidation, with a lot of people being arrested and whatnot. And the fear of, oh my gosh, another epidemic, and you better have a vaccine. It's going to save you in the hurricane even. But, Joe Biden is like, where does he come up with this stuff? But Oregon is so ripe for turning red in so many races. But as Lori said, or somebody had said here, I don't know if it was Lori, but that we can't take our foot off the gas.
No.
We've got to keep the pedal down and the pressure on and the donations flowing in, and the ads, because it is the ads. We're doing door to door out here in Umatilla County. And one candidate told me, gosh, I can't believe that voters, they just don't know anything. I said, no, that's why we try to do a lot of voter education, because you're fearful that when people get their ballot, they're going to look at it. They're going to maybe they'll read the voter pamphlet and, and it's, well, I don't like that person's name, so I'm not going to vote. They're not educated. And we've got to do a huge push, even in our own communities. If we're more than letters to the editor, if we can take one of the ads that the campaign has put out already and get it in our local papers for people, that's a way of helping the candidates.
Yeah,
it is an in-kind donation, but it's a way of helping the candidates reach voters in our local communities without, we can't just wait for them. We need to help the candidates reach our voters in our areas.
We do. And yesterday we talked about an article that pointed out that 57% of Kotek voters think everything is fine. And when they did the analysis as to why everything's fine, not only did they tend to be the wealthiest people in the state who aren't being affected by the stuff that's hitting the working class everywhere, such as inflation and crime and homelessness surrounding them, but also they live in a media bubble. Everybody is in a sense either in a media bubble or just tuning it out.
Yeah.
If you're following the regular mainstream media in the state, so they actually don't know. So you have to go out and tell them. They may not realize the connection between the decline in the livability of the state and their living standards and the affordability of the state, and the people running the state who have been running it for a long time, who actually don't care about them at all. They don't care about them. Otherwise, they would have fixed these things or at least stopped making them worse, which is something you can count on from Tina Kotek if she were to win. Now, there's other races happening in the state that are also extremely important. It's probably the only time any of us can remember 3 open seats for Congress. And it's post redistricting plus some retirements, plus one guy, Schrader, got defeated by a leftist, Bernie Sanders person in CD5. And we have very good candidates in these 3 seats. And you know what the Democrats are doing in these 3 seats? They are starting to flail. In the case of the 4th congressional district, there's a fascinating thing that's happened. That is a race where the Republican nominee, Alex Skarlatos, it's his second run. He ran 2 years ago against the incumbent Peter DeFazio, who had been elected to 18 terms. DeFazio retired.
That's enough.
That's enough. And then Val Hoyle, who is the Bureau of Labor and Industry secretary here in Oregon, is running for that seat. And it turns out that as we get to know Val Hoyle, she endorsed an effort to raise taxes on families making only $31,000 a year. She endorsed something called Measure 2182, which would raise taxes on families. And she worked with the extreme wing of her party to do this to middle-class families, the people that they claim they care about. And Alex Skarlatos pointed out here, he said, Oregon's 4th congressional district is the poorest in the state. I'm running to offer solutions to reduce inflation, the cost of energy, and unlike Val Hoyle, I will never support any legislation that raises taxes on families making $31,000 a year.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the measure was rejected by a 2-to-1 margin, but she can't unsupport something she did support. She wanted to jack up these taxes, and she deserves to pay a price at the ballot box. And that's CD4, which is a lot of that Lane County, Eugene, Springfield, Corvallis, and on down to Curry County and Coos County down in the southern part of the state, an area that's been trending Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have CD5. And we know CD5 is probably by far even the most competitive one. The Republican nominee is Lori Chavez-DeRemer. And she's the former mayor of Happy Valley, a town in the district. And she was in a debate just yesterday with her opponent, which is Jamie McLeod Skinner. That's the Bernie Sanders leftist who actually cheered on the Antifa rioters and was fine with police be defunding. And so we've heard all this crap, right, that they do. She attacked Lori, claiming falsely that Lori was somehow a supporter of extremists. The old white nationalist accusation, which Lori Chavez-DeRemer is Latino descent, and yet apparently she's part of the extremist fringe. And then
they'll call her racist next.
That's exactly that's coming. I'm sure that's been uttered at some point. And but she turned back to McLeod Skinner and say, "Are you a progressive in your politics?" And McLeod Skinner dodged it because, Bernie Sanders, yes, progressive. That's where she's at. That's what she ran on against Greg Walden before redistricting. And she said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm proud to have supporters of all types." And then, it's this usual stuff where they start claiming that they can stop all crime by passing more gun laws that they refuse to enforce, and then allowing police to be defunded. And that McLeod Skinner actually participated in defund the police marches, which Chavez Dreamer has put in her ads. She backs it up. And of course, McLeod Skinner now claims is not true or misunderstood, the usual stuff. And McLeod Skinner, she's claiming that Chavez Dreamer is an out of touch millionaire who has multiple homes and multi-million-dollar homes and blah blah blah. And yet, most of the support for the Democrats, as we've found, is coming from the richest Oregonians and not the working class who have had it with this stuff. And so housing and homelessness. I mean, I think we all know that that the Democrats are the ones who aided and abetted this. She's defending, McLeod Skinner is defending the solutions that have the Democrats put forward that have led to more of it and created a housing affordability crisis. It's time for big change in the state because the Democrats are actually contributing to the problem. And then, of course, they go and attack Chavez Dreamer as if she is causing wildfires. And I think she managed to turn the tables on McLeod Skinner, who is, of course, uttering the same tired talking points that the real thing that everybody cares about in the state is the climate crisis, the real present danger. And they don't care about having energy. They don't even want it. And Chavez Dreamer rightly points out something that I know we're going to talk about here before we're done, which is energy independence. Yeah. America needs to be energy independent, not dependent on Saudi Arabia or Russia or any of these places, and where we know that the electricity is going to stay on in this state. I don't know if we can count on that actually with Democrat policies.
No, I'll tell you, with not with our current governor and not with the Democrat policies. When it's been about a year now that Governor Brown had gone on Your Voice, Your Vote and said, Oregonians, you all need to be prepared for power outages in 2 years. And I thought, wow, there's a crystal ball. But, where I live here in Eastern Oregon, they just demolished, they shut down the Boardman coal-fired plant.
They blew up the smokestack. Yeah, we ran the video.
Demolished the smokestack. And, we have over in Europe, they are going back to their coal-fired plants because of what's happening, with OPEC and with the Nord Stream, not just OPEC, but with the Nord Stream pipeline. And so they just solidified. And when they shut the Boardman coal plant down, they were to build a natural gas facility, energy facility plant. That has been nixed. So in the same week, and that's been coming, the same time frame, they've nixed that and they destroyed the coal-fired plant. So there is no way to replace that energy that we were getting.
They're burning the bridges basically behind them and saying, we're not going back. And if energy is too expensive for you, good.
That's that is what they're saying. And then yet we have gas prices today. OPEC is going to cut production by 2 million barrels a day. So our gas prices are going up. And this morning, when I was watching a Fox Business Channel, actually, this morning with my coffee, and they said, you know what, we could see gas at well over $100 a barrel very soon. And
while the economy slows down, which is probably the reason why they're cutting production, because the Biden economy is heading straight into the toilet. Remember, there's a recession that we're not in, that they refuse to admit.
Right.
So this is known as stagflation. This means the economy is stagnating and it's starting to decline. People can't afford things, and yet prices are still going up.
Yes, and and yet we're not turning on America's energy.
Right.
We're not turning on America's production. We don't need to worry about OPEC and what they're doing. But when you're not taking care of our country, and that's the Democrats' plan, they don't care. It's Biden's got failed policies, failed economic policies, failed energy policies. They're more worried about global warming and the environment than the citizens of our nation being able to feed themselves and warm themselves, and with winter coming. And the Biden administration doesn't give a rip about what's happening in Europe, because we could be helping Europe through this.
We actually have enough energy to solve the whole thing, and pretty much alleviate this problem, which, by the way, isn't going to be a one winter problem. This problem is going to continue, especially now that there's been damage to those pipelines. This is going to continue for several years. And the only solution is that the ally who they've had since the end of World War II can actually supply them energy. And all we're going to do is make sure they have plenty of it. Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
That our President Brandon, is, head and keister on this one. So I think I can say that on social media, can I?
I think so. I think keister's just a fine word.
Yeah, perfect for this one. So one more piece of news on congressional races. So when they can't run on their policies and they can't gaslight people for being responsible for problems Democrats caused, then the other thing they like to do is just lie. And Andrea Salinas, who is a state representative running the Democrat candidate for the 6th congressional districts, has decided to run ads, negative ads, that are provably false, claiming that Mike Erickson was charged with drug possession when he never was. And the district attorney in Hood River has come out and said it is false. It is not true. And Andrea Salinas has decided to keep running these ads anyway. And so here's what the latest development is, because, if it were a Republican running ads that had provably false claims in them, first of all, nearly all of them would take it down and apologize. But the other thing is TV networks wouldn't accept them. But apparently there's a different standard when it comes to Democrats telling bald-faced lies. So here's what's happened. They're making it clear right now. Mike Erickson's civil attorney is making it clear that they're going to threaten defamation lawsuits against the Capitol Chronicle, that republished an article about the whole thing, that is false and defamatory. And they're going to sue not only Andrea Salinas, but they're actually going to file a lawsuit that could result to overturning the election because of the falsehood that's being perpetrated. It is a fraud.
Wow.
And so I haven't really heard about something like this happening very, very often, but look, if somebody lies about you, you got to fight like hell back against it. And it's not like she's talking about the issues people care about.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. She can't talk about any of that, and so to go on an attack campaign and slanderous campaign and knowingly continuing to run false ads that even, that's just, you know what though? But this is the Democrat tactics. This is the left's tactics. They think if you say a lie often enough, people are going to end up believing that.
And tell a big lie. Tell a big lie. That's straight out of the Nazi propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, right?
Yeah, it is.
Tell a big lie. People will believe it because it's like, oh, they wouldn't tell something so false. It must be true. So this is what they do. That's how they roll. Now, so that's kind of the congressional district update. Those are 3 seats that it appears were, I think in CD4, we're closing the deficit there, coming from behind. And I think we got a shot at that one. CD5, we're up. That's why all these false and silly attacks are being launched by the left and the media. And Lori Chavez Dreamer's like, whap, whap, just knocking them down and focusing on what people care about. And now, of course, the outright bald-faced lies in a race where it appears Mike Erickson also has a lead. This is why they do this stuff, because they can't run a regular campaign, so they lie. Now,
they don't have any winning policies, so they can't, you can't bolster Democrat policies because none of them are winning.
They are not only failing, but these policies have produced such awful results that even if you said, I'm going to change the policies, they don't believe you. Not anymore.
No, not
because they were vehement about doing these things that are actually damaging the economy and making it livability impossible for people. But now there's two Democrats that have decided to take it to the next level. Now, Jeff Golden has been caught in what we can kindly state is a N-word scandal, and it's been covered by Fox News. He's a state senator who back in the 1970s wrote a memoir called Watermelon Summer, where he spent a summer on a Georgia sharecropper's farm. And apparently he's responsible for using the N-word many times in his memoir. And he's been endorsed by all the major candidates on the Democrat side. So it's like they're all scurrying like little bugs running for cover, and people are demanding that he issue apologies. I'm going to post the article because I don't even want to repeat the stuff he said, but you have to read it for yourself. It's made national news, and this is what Democrats are stuck with. It couldn't happen to a nicer party.
Yes, exactly.
And then last but not least, on the Democrat campaign antics, if you can't win on your policies, and if you can't win by gaslighting your opponent, you can't win by lying, telling bald-faced lies, then the next thing you can do is give gift cards to voters. And this is in House District 49. The Democrat candidate in that district, Zach Hudson, he's offering free $10 gift cards to potential voters as prizes during his campaign event. You and I both know that one of the first things we ever learned when we started participating in politics and organizing like tables and event booths and door-to-door, you can't give anything of value to voters in exchange for getting them to participate in the electoral process, period.
No, that's called bribing. I mean, this is bribing, and this is very illegal when it comes to electioneering, and elections. Being a candidate, you cannot do that.
So he gave these out at a fundraiser at Red Sunset Park in Gresham on September 5th. He was giving the gift cards out to people who answered trivia questions correctly. And these $10 cards are clearly items above the level of items of nominal value. Like you can give out, bumper stickers and buttons and things like that. But you can't give out things that clearly have cash value to it. And
clearly,
it violates Oregon election law ORS 260.665. It's for involving, quote, undue influence, unquote. It is amazing that the guy is this bleeding stupid, really.
Yeah, it is. It is, and he's running for office. So good luck with that. It tells you kind of, is that who you want representing you? No. And
I mean, someone's probably having a nice talking to with him, but let's face it, we're going to win some House seats. I think this could be one of them, and it couldn't happen again to a nicer party.
I pray all the time that we do. Let me tell you, we've got to. We need to pick up as many as we can.
Yeah, we have to win by 3 touchdowns here if we can, because the margin of fraud, right? We always, not just after 2020, we've always talked about that in the Republican Party, because close elections are not always working out for us. Votes seem to come out of nowhere, and they always seem to be Democrat votes showing up. Like I found a bag of votes in a trunk or behind a machine, or et cetera.
Or they got now delivered in the mail without any postmark on them.
That's right. Yep. the election could go on for a while. But here's a good reason if everybody wants to know why you need to run through the tape here at the end of the election and continue, and then be ready to do a victory lap as if you needed to do it just to make sure you still won. 3 Bend Lapine district teachers were fired because of the refusing to take the COVID vaccine. When did this happen? It just happened. It is, and the school board at Bend Lapine listened to their testimony. They all gave their testimony.
Yeah.
And by a 6-0 vote, they decided to terminate these teachers. I think it's time to terminate the school board at the next election opportunity, which I think could come up in May of 23 for at least some of them, and then you could recall the others. And people read this article and they're like, "Is this from like last year or something?" It's like, no, this just happened. Why are they still terminating people because of vaccination status? When actually that's not, even the CDC isn't saying that you have to do this in order to have a school open. No one's saying it.
Right. And the thing is, these teachers were placed on leave in October of last year, a year ago.
Yep.
And now they're being terminated. And this termination hearing, it was set after the teachers failed to submit proof of vaccination or religious exemption. And you do need to read through this. But the chair of this committee said, we have to follow the law. Wait a minute.
What was that?
Right.
It was the Oregon Health Authority throwing thunderbolts from on high with more information that has turned out to be false time and again about what expectation they could have. They said that the vaccines would stop the spread. Did it do that?
Never. No, it did not. No, it did not.
No, they're not even saying now. They're not even asserting that it did. They just said, well, we can tell people to do this, so I have to do it.
Yeah. And so, this is the thing. These teachers, this never should have happened. And you are absolutely right that you need to replace this school board that over here and replace these from being able to do this kind of thing. This is not this next election or recall them, whatever needs to happen, quite frankly. They need to. So, in fact, I'll tell you, it was the human resource officer. From the district's perspective, is strictly an issue of the district needing to follow the law. Well, it's not a law.
It's not a law, and
a law.
On top of that, it is,
and it's failed.
It has not worked the way it was promised. They're unwilling to question that.
Yeah.
And it's no longer necessary. They should have spent this hearing reinstating these teachers. Instead, they took a guy who was a cherished teacher, taught at Mountain View High School for 26 years.
Yes.
His name is Mark Schultz. They took a guy named Zach Webb who taught at Lapine Middle School for 5 years. And then Kelly Lundy, a teacher at Ensworth Elementary. And they just said, we don't need you. And then they claim that there's a shortage of teachers. What a bunch of idiots. A shortage. And they can't find people, and yet they're terminating perfectly good teachers when no one's being required to get vaccinated in order to work anymore at these things. It's absurd. It sounds like something that should have been from a year ago when it first came forward as a story. We should be saying, enough. Let's get back to being a normal society again. And they refuse.
Yes. And, there were nearly 40 people at that meeting with signs and showing support for these teachers. And, they should have looked at the public. They should have looked at the public of their community and putting that ahead of this, firing them. Hey, listen, our last article, though, goes to the courts, and it does require it is about real laws. And our U.S. Supreme Court has ordered, it's a win for gun owners, has ordered the lower court of Massachusetts to reconsider a gun control law. And it is because, so the Supreme Court this week ordered the lower court to reconsider a controversial gun control law directive that the High Court gave in light of recently issued jurisprudence regarding the Second Amendment of the Constitutions. And the Massachusetts law in question was brought to by a state resident that was prohibited from purchasing pistols there due to his having been convicted of unlawfully carrying a handgun in 2004. They'll get to the chase of this. So they've come back and they said, actually, the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right, subject to an entirely different body of rules than other Bill of Rights guarantees. And Justice Clarence Thomas wrote that in the majority opinion. And we know of no other constitutional right that an individual may exercise only after demonstrating to government officers of some special need. And this actually goes to the bill 14, measure 114 in Oregon right now, that's going to be on the ballot, because they're saying, oh no, you're going to have to, go get special training and follow all of these rules in order to buy a pistol or buy a gun, not just a pistol, any gun in the state.
They're going to say that your Second Amendment rights are subject to receiving a permit from the state to have that right.
Right, exactly.
So it's different than a concealed carry, which is a special license for exercising concealed carry within the state. This is to say, even if you want to just have it in your home, the minute you walk into a gun store and say, I want to purchase a gun, it doesn't matter what the purpose is. So they're going to put up a lot of barriers, and then they're going to attach a lot of conditions to it. And they're going to try to make it so that you actually, frankly, won't be able to have a Second Amendment right unless the people running the state of Oregon and setting those rules give you permission. That is exactly what they're saying here, is not the way a constitutional right can be conditioned. It would be like saying you can have a First Amendment right as long as you go get a permit from the state government and take a training course in how to lawfully speak to others in our society and express your opinion. That doesn't exist either.
Right, exactly. And so that's why this Supreme Court decision to send this law back to the lower courts for reconsideration it actually applies to, if for some reason the voters of Oregon pass Measure 114, this right here would shut it down. But of course, it has to go through our court system. It has to go absolutely through our Oregon court system before it can go to the Supreme Court. And, people know that is unconstitutional. We know that this is unconstitutional attack on our Second Amendment rights, but they're trying to chip away at any way, shape, or form that they can, saying, well, the state has the right to do that. And no, the state doesn't have the right to do that.
Correct. And also, the whole purpose of a constitution and the set of rights that exist within the Bill of Rights is that these are not rights that some simple majority can just vote away because they dislike them. They are rights that are given to you by God. They do not have the ability to just say that government, unless they amend the United States Constitution. That is the only way they can do this. And by the way, Oregon has a even more expansive Second Amendment right outlined within it, as they do the First Amendment. So it should be even harder for Measure 114 to survive scrutiny in the Oregon court system, not to mention the federal court system. So this does give hope that at least as a backstop, we have the federal court system doing this. They did it in New York State when they threw out a very similar set of rules that took place there. And so it really does matter who our judges and justices are. Keep that in mind in the future, I think, is what we should say to everyone too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Kevin, this is all the time I have for tonight. And thank you very much for joining me on Wonderful Wednesday. Don is a little bit under the weather, and I think he'll probably be back next week. And everybody, I'll tell you what, just do everything you can. I ask you all to do everything you can to help our candidates, be it putting out signs or walking or talking, making phone calls, whatever we can to help our candidates to turn our state red. We've got to flip it around.
Let's do it. And let's share, everyone, please share our show here with as many folks as you can, because they need to hear all the stuff that we've been sharing here, because a lot of folks are in those media bubbles and don't know this stuff. And we're happy to do it every day because you share it with everyone you can.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.